The shot arrived before the sound. That was the first thing everyone noticed. A flat, violent impact echoed across Range 7, steel ringing sharp and absolute, followed a breath later by the distant crack of the rifle report. The order was backward. Wrong. Unsettling. At 1100 meters, the laws of distance usually announce themselves properly. Sound followed action. Cause preceded effect. Not tonight. The steel silhouette at the far end of the range jerked violently, swinging against its chains, the white-painted torso marked by a single, perfect hole at center mass. Dead center. No drift, no correction, no second round, just one shot. Then silence. Naval Base Coronado sat under a moonless sky, the Pacific air damp and metallic, clinging to exposed skin. Floodlights illuminated the range in hard white cones, leaving everything beyond the firing lanes swallowed by darkness. Wind flags fluttered weakly, inconsistent, enough to complicate a long shot, not enough to forgive mistakes. A dozen men stood frozen behind the firing line. Every one of them wore the trident. This was not a training class, not a qualification, not a joint demo. These were active-duty SEALs, combat veterans, instructors, platoon chiefs, brought in after hours for a closed-door evolution no one had explained fully, and none of them had fired that round. Chief Petty Officer Grant Harlow felt it in his chest before he processed it intellectually. That tight, unmistakable sensation veterans got when something impossible happened in a place governed by rules. He lowered his binoculars slowly. "Who took that shot?" he asked. No one answered. Behind him, boots shifted on concrete, a suppressed exhale. Someone swore under their breath. Harlow scanned the line. No rifle barrels were warm. No bolts were open mid-cycle. No shooter was settling recoil. The range safety officer, a second-class petty officer assigned temporarily, stood rigid near the observation platform, eyes flicking anywhere but at the men. That told Harlow everything. "Range!" Harlow said again, voice even, dangerous in its calm. "Confirm shooter." The RSO swallowed. "Stand by. Stand by." That was when irritation crept in. SEALs were trained to control ego, but pride was still a living thing, and someone had just walked into their house and rearranged the furniture without permission. "Bullshit," one of the operators muttered. Nobody called cold range. Another added, "You don't sneak a shot past a dozen optics." Harlow didn't join them. He was staring past the firing line now, toward the elevated concrete platform behind it. 3 figures stood there. The RSO, a lieutenant commander in NS Group 1 insignia, and a woman. She stood slightly apart, rifle slung across her chest, posture relaxed but precise. She wasn't watching the men, she wasn't watching the officers. She was watching the target through binoculars, as if confirming something she already knew. That bothered Harlow more than the shot. The woman on the platform, she wasn't dressed differently. No flashy kit, no morale patches. Her plate carrier was worn, functional. Her uniform was clean but not new. Her presence felt intentional. "You're telling me," one of the SEALs said, raising his voice just enough to test authority, "that somebody fired on our range without calling it?" The lieutenant commander stepped forward. The shot was authorized. That answer landed poorly. Harlow turned his head slightly. "Sir, with respect, that wasn't the question." The officer's eyes hardened. "Chief, who took the shot?" Harlow said, each word controlled. A pause, the kind that stretches just long enough to reveal cracks. The woman lowered her binoculars. For the first time, she looked at them. Her gaze was steady, evaluating, not hostile, not impressed. Just measuring. "I did," she said. The words were quiet. Clear. They rippled across the line like a dropped tool in a silent room. Someone laughed, a short bark of disbelief. "No way," another SEAL shook his head. "Come on, that's past a click. Winds quartering. Low contrast. It wasn't luck," someone else said. "And it wasn't you." The woman stepped off the platform. She didn't hurry. She didn't wait for permission either. Each step was deliberate, boots striking concrete with a cadence that suggested command rather than defiance. Harlow watched her hands. Steady, no tremor, no unconscious adjustment. "Lieutenant Commander," the NS officer said sharply. "That's enough." She ignored him. "I understand the confusion," she said, stopping just short of the firing line. "This wasn't scheduled. It wasn't meant to be comfortable." One of the SEALs crossed his arms. Then what was it meant to be? She met his eyes. Undeniable, the rank that changed everything. All right, another operator said, frustration bleeding through discipline. Who are you? The woman exhaled slowly. Then she reached up, removed her helmet, unfastened her patrol cap. The range lights caught silver, an oak leaf. Lieutenant Commander, higher than every enlisted man on the line, equal to the officer who'd tried to stop her. The effect was immediate. No one spoke. No one moved. Rank in the military didn't just define authority, it defined gravity. Conversations bent around it, challenges evaporated in its presence. I'm Lieutenant Commander Mara Vale, she said. Naval Intelligence, temporarily assigned to this installation. The silence deepened. I took the shot. Harlow felt it settle. Not shock, recognition. He'd seen this before, rarely, when someone didn't need to boast because proof was already downrange. You're not team, one of the SEALs said finally. No, Vale agreed. Then why are you shooting on our range? She looked at him, genuinely curious. Why does that matter? Because this is our house. She nodded. Then you should be concerned about who's breaking into it. A question. No one wanted asked. Vale turned toward the $9 officer. Sir, with respect, you've had 6 weeks. The officer stiffened. This is not the place. His is exactly the place, she replied calmly. Because this is where the problem believes it's untouchable. That word again. Problem. Harlow watched faces shift. Defensive instincts flared. Loyalty complicated suspicion. You think one of us is compromised? Someone asked. I think, Vale said evenly, that classified mission windows don't leak themselves. She reached into a pouch and pulled out a tablet, tapped it once. 3 timestamps appeared. 3 operations, she continued. 3 separate elements, 3 separate planning cells, each adjusted internally within 48 hours of execution. She tapped again, each followed by corresponding hostile repositioning within enemy networks not capable of independent intelligence collection. She looked up. That narrows the field. No one spoke. The truth had entered the room. It did not ask permission. You didn't need to shoot, the $9 officer said tightly. Yes, Vale replied. I did. She gestured toward the distant steel. Someone here believes skill belongs exclusively to reputation. That rank protects behavior. That silence preserves brotherhood. She let the words hang. The shot was to demonstrate that assumptions kill. Harlow's instinct later, after the range was declared cold, after the men dispersed in uneasy silence, Chief Harlow stayed behind. Vale was seated at a bench, cleaning the Mk-22 with ritual precision. You embarrassed them, Harlow said quietly. She didn't look up. I challenge them, same thing, depending who you ask. She paused. Do you think they need protecting? He considered that. No, he said. I think they need honesty. She resumed cleaning. You didn't laugh, she said. No, Harlow replied. I've seen shots like that. Her hands slowed. Where? Kunar, he said. High ground, snow. Shooter never missed. Vale nodded once. Then you understand, she said, standing. This won't end quietly. She slung the rifle and walked past him. The range lights shut off behind her. Darkness reclaimed the concrete. But Harlow knew something fundamental had shifted. Because when truth finally speaks inside elite walls, it never whispers. The base looked different in the early hours after the shot. Not visibly. Nothing about Naval Base Coronado changed on the surface. The gates still opened on time. PT formations still formed at dawn. Aircraft still lifted off the tarmac with the same disciplined indifference to individual lives. But beneath that routine, something had fractured. Truth had a way of doing that. It didn't explode. It cracked. Slowly, invisibly. Until pressure found the seams. Chief Petty Officer Grant Harlow felt it the moment he stepped into the compound the next morning. Conversation stopped when he passed. Laughter cut short. Eyes followed, then slid away. He had seen this before, too. The aftermath of an uncomfortable truth always began with silence. An order without paper. Harlow was halfway through his first cup of burnt command coffee when the message came through. Not official, not logged, not written. Chief, you're requested. Building C. Now. No sender. No subject line. That alone told him who it was from. Building C was not marked on most maps. It didn't need to be. Everyone who worked long enough on base learned where it was and, more importantly, when not to ask why someone else was going there. Intelligence. Oversight. The part of the military that did not wear its intentions openly. Harlow knocked once. "Enter!" came a woman's voice. Vale stood behind a bare metal desk. No flags, no awards, no personal items. A screen on the wall showed rolling data, timestamps, call logs, access points. None of it labeled. She gestured to a chair. "Sit, Chief." He did. She studied him for a moment, then spoke. "After last night, you could have requested reassignment." "I could," Harlow agreed. "You didn't." "No, ma'am. Why?" He met her eyes. "Because if someone's dirty, I want them found. And if no one is, I want that proven." Vale nodded slowly. "That's why I asked for you." The shape of the problem Vale tapped the screen. It shifted to a secure internal layout of the base. "Someone with access to planning cells is feeding timing adjustments," she said. "Not targets, not coordinates, just when." Harlow frowned. "That's not enough to compromise a mission by itself. Unless the enemy already knows where," Vale replied. "Then timing becomes everything." She pulled up another data set. "Communications logs," she continued. "Encrypted, legal, routine. But patterns don't lie." Harlow leaned forward. "You think it's a planner?" "I think it's someone who knows how planners think," Vale corrected. "Someone trusted enough not to be questioned." That word again, trusted. Harlow felt a familiar tightening in his chest. The teams ran on trust. You could survive mistakes. You could survive fear. You could not survive betrayal. "Who's in your scope?" he asked. Vale held his gaze. "Everyone." Pressure from above. The knock came sooner than expected. A captain this time. Navy. Clean uniform. Clean smile. The kind of officer who never raised his voice because he never had to. "Lieutenant Commander Vale," he said smoothly. A word, she didn't stand. "If it's classified, you're cleared. If it's political, it can wait." The captain smiled thinner. "This base has concerns about optics." Vale tilted her head. "Optics don't get people killed. Leaks do. You embarrassed a platoon of operators," the captain replied. "That has consequences. Only if pride outranks security," Vale said evenly. The captain's smile vanished. "Be careful." Vale finally stood. "You too, Captain." He left. Harlow exhaled slowly. "They're going to bury this," he said. "They'll try," Vale agreed. "That's why we won't give them time. Night work." They started that night, unofficially, no orders, no tasking messages, just quiet movements and deniable presence. Vale worked the systems. Harlow worked the people. He listened, watched, noted who changed routines, who suddenly remembered meetings they didn't used to attend, who avoided eye contact. Trust fractures differently in different men. Some get loud, some get quiet, and some get careful. It was the careful ones that worried him. At Eero 200, Vale froze mid-typing. "Got something," she said. "What?" "Anomalous access," she replied. "Read-only but persistent. Someone's pulling planning metadata from an auxiliary terminal." Harlow leaned in. "Who has access?" She ran the check. Only 3 officers. The names appeared. Harlow recognized all of them. One made his stomach drop. "That can't be right," he said. Vale didn't look at him. "That's what everyone says." The cost of loyalty. The next morning, the base woke up to rumors. Nothing specific, just tension, whispers of investigations, of outsiders poking around where they didn't belong. One of the SEALs cornered Harlow near the locker room. "You working with her?" the man asked. Harlow didn't lie. "Yes." The SEAL's jaw tightened. "She doesn't understand us." Harlow stepped closer. "She understands consequences. That's not the same thing." "No," Harlow agreed. "It's worse." The man looked away. That hurt more than anger would have, a choice without applause. That night, Vale handed Harlow a file. "Tomorrow," she said, "this goes up the chain. What happens then?" She shrugged slightly. "Best case? Quiet arrest. Worst case? Career suicide." "For who?" "For everyone involved." Harlow studied the file. "And if the chain stops it?" Vale met his eyes. "Then we don't." The weight of that hung between them. No glory, no medals, just consequences. Harlow nodded once. All right, he said. Let's finish it. Vale allowed herself the smallest smile. Good, she replied. Because the truth is almost out of time. The moment truth begins to surface, power moves to contain it. By the third day after the shot, Naval Base Coronado was no longer merely tense. It was divided, the order that changed nothing. The directive came down just after morning colors, short, polite, deadly. All unauthorized investigative activities are to cease immediately. Effective now. No names attached, no signatures, no clarification, but everyone understood the message. Lieutenant Commander Mara Vale read it twice, then once more, slowly. She sat alone in Building C, the hum of servers surrounding her like a restrained animal. She did not forward it. She did not reply. Instead, she shut down the terminal, removed the drive, and placed it in a sealed pouch. Then she stood. The investigation was officially over, which meant it had reached the point where it mattered. The moment before confrontation, Chief Grant Harlow was on the grinder when she found him. He was running laps alone, an old habit, left over from deployments where exhaustion was the only honest state of mind. She waited until he finished. They shut us down, she said. Harlow didn't look surprised. Figured they would. She handed him the sealed pouch. What's that? Everything, Vale replied. Logs, access records, correlations, enough to indict or destroy. Or disappear, Harlow said. Yes, she agreed. Which is why I'm handing it to you. Harlow stared at the pouch. That's a heavy thing to carry. So is silence, Vale replied. A pause. Who is it? Harlow asked. Vale didn't answer immediately, then, quietly. Commander Paul Reeves. The name hit like a blunt object. Reeves wasn't just senior. He was respected, decorated, a man whose reputation had survived wars and committees alike. He also oversaw joint planning coordination, access without suspicion. Jesus, Harlow muttered. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything, Vale said. The weight of the name, by noon, the base felt smaller. Reeves' name carried weight in every hallway. Men lowered their voices. Officers avoided eye contact. No one wanted to be the first to believe it. That was how corruption survived in disciplined institutions. Not through chaos, but through reverence. Vale requested a meeting. Reeves accepted. Immediately. That worried Harlow more than refusal would have. The office with the view Commander Reeves' office overlooked the water. Framed photos lined the walls. Teams in desert dust, jungle rain, urban ruin. He stood when Vale entered. Lieutenant Commander, he said warmly. I hear you've had quite the introduction. Vale didn't sit. Someone is leaking mission timing, she said, and it traces back to your access credentials. Reeves's smile did not change. That's a serious accusation. Yes, Vale agreed. It is. He gestured toward the chair. Sit. Let's talk like professionals. She remained standing. I've already talked like a professional, Vale said. Now I'm talking like an officer sworn to prevent loss of life. Reeves's eyes sharpened slightly. You're young, he said. Talented, but you lack context. What I lack, Vale replied, is tolerance for rationalized betrayal. The silence stretched. Then Reeves sighed. You're chasing patterns, he said. Patterns can mislead. Patterns don't open terminals, Vale replied. People do. The mask slips Reeves stood and walked to the window. You think the world is cleanly divided, he said. Right and wrong, loyal and disloyal. He turned back. But war isn't like that. Vale didn't blink. You think you're protecting something, Reeves continued. But what you're really doing is threatening it. Truth doesn't threaten integrity, Vale said. It reveals whether it exists. Reeves's voice hardened. You will drop this. That's not your call. It is, he snapped. Because if this goes forward, careers end, units fracture, missions stall, or lives stop being lost, Vale countered. Reeves stared at her. Then he smiled. A cold thing. You took a shot on that range, he said. Impressive. But marksmanship doesn't grant moral authority. Vale leaned forward slightly. No, she said. Rank does. She removed the drive from her pouch and placed it on his desk. You're relieved of access pending review, she continued calmly. Effective immediately, Reeves's hand tightened into a fist. You don't have that authority. Vale met his eyes. Watch me. Fallout. Within hours, the base erupted. Reeves was escorted, politely, quietly, out of the planning wing. Phones rang, emails flew, orders contradicted each other. Some units were told to stand down, others to proceed. Confusion spread like smoke. Harlow watched it all from the periphery, his jaw set. This was the cost of truth. The threat that night, Vale found a note slipped under her door. No signature, just 5 words, "You just made enemies." She stared at it for a long moment. Then she burned it in the sink, a line that couldn't be crossed. The call came at 0317, a training accident, live fire exercise, 1 injured. Harlow arrived first. The scene was chaos. Medics moving, officers shouting, weapons cleared hastily. Vale knelt beside the wounded SEAL. The injury wasn't fatal, but it wasn't accidental either. She saw it immediately. Controlled shot. Intentional miss. Warning. Harlow met her eyes. "They're pushing back," he said. Vale nodded slowly. "They won't stop," she replied. "No," Harlow agreed. "But neither will we." Retaliation never announced itself. It arrived disguised as procedure. By the 4th night after the range incident, Naval Base Coronado was no longer simply under stress. It was under pressure, the kind that did not scream or explode, but pressed inward from all sides, forcing men and women to decide what mattered more, belonging or truth. Lieutenant Commander Mara Vale understood this better than most. She had built her career inside that pressure. The trap of procedure. The inquiry into Commander Reeves was officially ongoing, which in military language meant 2 things at once. The evidence was undeniable. Powerful people were deciding how much truth the institution could afford. Reeves himself had not been arrested. He had been temporarily reassigned. His access revoked, his presence removed, but his reputation carefully preserved. That preservation was deliberate. If Reeves fell too loudly, too publicly, the shockwave would expose more than one compromised hand. Vale knew it, Harlow knew it, and Reeves knew it most of all. Isolation. Vale felt the isolation first. Meetings she used to be invited to were suddenly rescheduled. Officers who once greeted her directly now spoke through intermediaries. Even routine requests required layers of approval that hadn't existed a week earlier. She was being contained, not punished, yet, but placed carefully in a box where she could do no further damage. At least that was the plan, the warning disguised as advice. The call came from an admiral, high enough that refusing wasn't an option. The office was immaculate. Flags, photos, order. The admiral gestured for Vale to sit. "Lieutenant Commander," he began, "your service record is exceptional." "Thank you, sir. You've demonstrated initiative." "Yes, sir, and initiative," he continued evenly, "must be balanced with restraint." Vale remained silent. "This command values cohesion," the admiral said. "Public fractures weaken deterrence." "With respect, sir," Vale replied. "Deterrence fails when enemies know our timing." The admiral studied her. "You're at a crossroads," he said. "You can be remembered as someone who protected the institution or someone who damaged it." Vale met his gaze. "Sir," she said calmly, "the institution is not the uniform. It's the lives inside it." A long pause. The admiral exhaled. "You're dismissed. No threat, no punishment, which meant the test was coming elsewhere." The night operation, it came 3 hours later. An unscheduled night exercise, joint element, limited briefing, live weapons authorized. That alone raised alarms. Harlow caught the detail immediately. "This isn't training," he muttered. Vale nodded. "No, it's theater." They stood near the edge of the compound as operators assembled. The mood was wrong, tight, quiet, edged with something unspoken. Orders were vague, objectives blurred, oversight minimal, too minimal. "This is how accidents happen," Harlow said. "This is how messages are sent," Vale replied. The moment of choice. The operation unfolded quickly, too quickly. Routes crossed that shouldn't have. Timings overlapped. Communication channels conflicted. And then, a flash. A round cracked past Vale's shoulder and struck concrete inches from her head. Not stray, not random, a deliberate near miss. Time slowed. Harlow moved instantly, pulling her down behind cover. "Contact?" someone shouted. "No!" Vale said sharply. "Hold fire!" Her voice cut through the chaos. "Cease movement!" she ordered. The range froze. Operators looked around, confused, adrenaline spiking. Vale stood. Slowly, calmly, she raised her voice, not shouting, but carrying. "This exercise is compromised," she said. "Weapons on safe, now." A few hesitated. Then one by one, safeties clicked, because rank mattered, but courage mattered more. The truth-exposed Vale turned toward the command element overseeing the exercise. "This was meant to intimidate," she said, "to create plausible deniability." Her eyes locked on one officer in particular, a commander, mid-level, trusted. "You authorized unsafe overlap," she continued. "You knew it increased risk," the officer stammered. You were counting on chaos to hide intent," Vale said. "You miscalculated." She stepped closer. "Because I don't scare easily." Harlow watched something rare happen. The line broke, not in anger, in relief. One of the operators spoke up. "This op was wrong." Another added, "We flagged the timing." A third, "We were told to proceed anyway." The silence shattered. The truth rushed in, and there was no stopping it now. Aftermath. By dawn, the operation was officially terminated. An investigation was opened into procedural violations. This time, it wasn't quiet. This time, there were witnesses, statements, records, and too many eyes to look away. Vale stood alone on the grinder as the sun rose. Harlow joined her. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded. "I am now." He looked out over the base. "They tried to scare you off." She allowed herself a small, tired smile. "They reminded me why I stayed." The sun rose over Naval Base Coronado like it always had, painting the concrete and steel in hard, unforgiving light. But the base itself had changed. Inside its walls, the balance of trust, authority, and courage had shifted irreversibly. Lieutenant Commander Mara Vale stood at the edge of the range, rifle slung, eyes scanning the horizon. She had not fired a shot this morning, but she felt every vibration in the air, every shadow and whisper. The previous night's confrontation had made her the pivot around which the truth now spun. Chief Petty Officer Grant Harlow approached quietly. "So, we survived," he said, voice low. Vale didn't smile. "We survived because we refused to be silent." By mid-morning, the chain of command had officially acknowledged the anomalies. The procedural violations, unsafe overlap during night operations, and leaked mission timing all led back to Commander Paul Reeves. The formal investigation was now public within the base, a rare auditable process that spared no one in its wake. Harlow and Vale watched from the observation deck as investigators moved through offices and terminals, collecting records, interviewing officers. The tension was palpable. Some men avoided the elevators, others whispered in corridors. Vale kept her composure. She had done her part. Now it was up to the system to act. And for the first time in a long while, she trusted that it would. Reeves was called to meet the Admiral in the morning sunlight. No grand courtroom, no press, just the kind of quiet room where truth demands attention. Vale observed from a distance. Reeves's usual charm and ease were gone. His hands twitched, his jaw tightened. For the first time, the reputation that had insulated him seemed fragile. "Commander Reeves," the Admiral began, "your actions have endangered personnel and compromised operational security. You will be relieved of command, pending full review, and all assignments restricted until further notice." Reeves swallowed hard, nodding. His bravado dissolved into resignation. Vale let herself exhale. Justice had not been easy, it had not been swift, but it had been inevitable. With Reeves removed, operations normalized gradually. Night drills resumed with oversight. Chains of command were clarified. Operators whispered less. Smiles returned, small but genuine. Harlow approached Vale one last time on the range. "You changed the course of this base. You made people account for their actions, and you didn't even fire a shot yesterday." Vale shook her head. "The shot doesn't matter. The courage to speak up, that's what matters." He looked at her, understanding more than words could convey. Years in the teams taught him that true strength wasn't always measured by weapons, medals, or rank. It was measured by integrity under pressure. Vale walked alone as the morning wind carried the salt from the Pacific. The base was quiet now, but she knew the lesson would remain. She reflected on what had happened. In elite units, silence is a currency. Trust is fragile. Authority can protect or corrupt. Courage isn't always physical, It's moral, and it can be the difference between life and death. She remembered the operators' faces on the range the first night she had taken the impossible shot. Confusion, pride, respect, fear, all emotions distilled into a single, undeniable truth. Honesty, skill, and integrity outweigh hierarchy when lives hang in the balance. Lieutenant Commander Mara Vale had fired the shot that no one could ignore, but more importantly, she had fired the shot that reminded everyone of a principle too easily forgotten. Truth is heavier than fear, and integrity is sharper than any weapon. The military is an institution of discipline, structure, and obedience, but it is also a human organism, prone to error and corruption. The lesson of the range, the investigation, and the night operation is timeless. Courage is not just facing the enemy outside, it is standing up to the enemy within. Integrity, when wielded without fear, preserves life, trust, and honor. Rank may freeze the room, but moral courage can freeze injustice itself. And as Vale walked along the concrete path overlooking the ocean, the weight of that truth felt lighter than any medal she could ever earn.